What's up with you? What's up, big guy?
You need to do a big video.
Then do a big video.
No. Of what?
Do a top 5.
No!
Do a top 5!
Of what? Fucking mountains or some shit.
Mate, people fucking love top 5s. Just do a top 5.
We always regret it.
Do a top 5 of things that Blizzard regret.
That could work. Yeah, we don't even have to carry people in 25 anymore. Sick, bro.
You saved my spot
For
for the 10 man. It's 10 man.
Oh. Okay, so as with there's several things on the list when a feature is implemented into a game that has so many players, then undoubtedly, for a proportion of them, it is going to be their favourite feature. And when it's taken away, those guys are not going to be happy. Should it go away, especially if they were creating their best memories in the game at the time? The first stab at 10-man raiding that wasn't simply a side activity like Karazhan was in Wrath of the Lich King, with raiding having a 10-man version which was intended to be simpler, rewarding slightly lesser quality gear than its slightly, and I really use the term loosely here, 25-man versions like Nax Ramis, but it was the beginning of the promise of a group of 10 bros being able to do all the raiding they want. So people were pissed. With the announcement of a 10-man, people instantly noped the hell out of their TPC guilds to build their own 10-mans, and alongside that making brand new guilds instantly defaulted to being 10 men, because guess why? Getting 9 bros is way easier than getting 24 bros, so it effectively stumped the creation of all 25 mans going forward. It's just too much hassle. I mentioned greed. 25 mans were getting better items and twice as much loot overall as they could do both 25 and 10 at the same time. This is unfair, of course. Not only that, but balancing was always going to be a nightmare. Some bosses were harder on 10 than 25, some achieves the same. Remember that the most difficult challenge in early Wrath was Sartharian 3. And guess what? Those big nasty 25-man raiders had better gear and were taking away the 10-man realm first, which again was considered unfair. 10-mans rightly, want to be clear here, rightly felt that not only were they getting far less than they deserved or thought they deserved, but were also out of the running for getting what many determined should have been achievements only obtainable by the 10-man dedicated raiders. And it was also super goddamn easy, which sucked. From this point, it gets really fucking weird, with Blizzard trying their absolute best to balance and appease millions of players who all want different things. In Ulduar, 10-man loot was worse than 25, but do the hard mode and you got some 10-man loot. That was equivalent though to 25-man normal loot, but not as good as 25-man hard mode loot, but some of the 10-man hard mode loot was better, stats-wise, than the 25-man hard mode loot. In TOC, they just flat out made 4 different difficulty modes, and in ICC the same, but the further and further down the rabbit hole we go, the 10-man option, with the obvious basic facts remained, it just cannot be balanced properly. And the only way to make it work is to make it easier. To allow for the utterly insane number of spec variations possible in a 10-man environment. The issue is the loot. The community cares a lot about item level. Remember, Wrath of the Lich King was the launch of the gear score, man. That balanced acquisition of loot is the only way to keep things cool, and it simply isn't possible. They tried all the way through to the Dragon Soul, making enormous mistakes along the way, it has to be said. Usually, sadly, it was in the 10-man sphere, with untested bosses going unchecked and unfixed for months. The best they landed on was 10 heroic, being equal to 25-man normal, despite the boss difficulties being nothing alike in comparison. Beyond the rose-tintedness of some, there were constant outcries to fix a system that was never going to work in the equal way players wanted. Easier in 10, then you're shitting on the 25 guilds who have so much more to do, managing all these extra people. Is it harder in 10? You're shitting on the 10-man guilds as normal, free ride again for the 25-mans. To be fair, all the way up to the end of Miss, Blizz gave it their all to achieve the impossible and make it fair for everyone. They did. With players throwing out endless suggestions such as loot locking or linking you to one mode in some fashion and all kinds of things, but to no avail. And eventually we landed on Flex in Siege, which is what we have today. Despite Flex being a decent, if not the best solution so far, as I'm sure many commenters below will tell you, it's still not exactly perfect in some cases. And for many, that quest for 10-man greatness should never come to an end, as that was their favourite ever thing in WoW. And I truly believe that after all the years Blizzard gave to it to trying to make it work, they really wish they just hadn't bothered.
Yo! Raid time, bruv!
What?
Raid time!
When?
Now! Get out your garrison and get ready! Come on! Raid time!
What do you want?
What the hell is wrong with you?
What do you mean?
It's raid time and you're in your fucking garrison.
Well, where else am I supposed to go?
Raid! Come on, man!
The garrison gives you loot. Come. You don't need to raid anymore.
Oh my god. Are you kidding me?
Don't touch these. These are mine. Yeah, we don't need to raid anymore. It just comes from here. We just wait.
Bro, you need to get out.
You got loot in here and money.
But it's raid time and you're stuck in your garrison. Oh no!
I gotta stay strong.
I can't deal with this.
This is not about the boredom or the missions table. It's about the fact that WoW's first attempt at introducing base building to WoW, a feature that had been asked for nearly a decade, was such a colossal fuck-up. A fuck-up that has risked it never returning for years because of how sour the taste left in the players' mouths from WoD. Here's the thing. When Blizzard announced WoD, and with it garrisons, the wording on the video itself was, build and upgrade your garrison. What the fuck does that mean? It's so outrageously vague that it led to imaginations running wild. People imagining everything from city skylands to Minecraft, a base filled with everything from the heads of the fallen beasts that you had slayed to a reputable gentleman's establishment with ladies of the night. Players' minds running wild at just how they were going to have their base. Can we visit other people's garrisons was the questions being thrown immediately. But as we well know, it just didn't go down that way. Not only did Blizz decide to make every building functional and only puttable in their preset plots, it was as far away from being your own as it could ever be, lacking pretty much all customization. Combining that with the incessant mission quests kept people trapped inside those bland walls, and it has potentially ruined any and all development into a base building system for potentially forever. It really feels like the game simply isn't capable of tacking on that kind of system. I hope it comes back. I want it to come back, but done properly. If it's ever serious, then care needs to be taken to convince the players not to just jump off a cliff when it's announced. And hopefully, we pray, it won't cause the game to be pretty much fucked for a week or two.
I cost you 1,000 resources.
Hey! Water Strider up, bro! Boat day!
Well, we can't really mention flying mounts without this obvious feature. I'd love to see the numbers. But when Ion slyly dropped that message at BlizzCon that basically everyone had forgone their cool, interesting ground mounts and defaulted to using Water Striders, the message hit home. Water Striders were a bad fucking idea. They disabled them in Legion temporarily and people were pissed. Again, rightly so. There's a pretty solid mop rep grind needed to get this wonderfully convenient, spotting a trend, yeah I am, mount, so it's not weird that players would find it bullshit that it can no longer be used. Although apparently you can now get it from time walking. Thank you very much, Blizzard, appreciate that. Wasn't it such a big deal in Warlords of Draenor? But if you think about it, Draenor is hardly Caladan. Anyone get that? Hope so, mate. But when Blizzard threw their beloved pond-skipping insect under the bus, fuck that noise. I can forgive some of the features made earlier in the game because, well, they never saw it going on this long, but this shit was Mists of Pandaria. We're in full swing at this point, bro. You know that the guy who didn't add only functions in Pandaria to the tooltip got a lubed up welcome stick to the rectum for that one. This is just going to be one of those features like flying that isn't going away quietly. Function over fashion every single time. Doesn't matter how many super badass mounts Blizzard implements. That doesn't walk on water. And there is a lot of water in the Broken Isles. Asking around, I discovered so many people who didn't even have it on a separate binding. They just use it as their permanent mount instead of putting the hundreds of cool ponies into the bin. 2 expansions later, and that little creepy bug is stronger than ever.
Long.
Good. Yeah. Well, it's no secret that Blizzard has actually been trying to remove flying mounts for the past few years. Of all the features on this list, flying mounts is the one the community is most aware of. But why? Well, the flying mount is a solution to a problem the game no longer has. In fact, it hasn't been a problem for over a decade. Vanilla WoW's flight point system was a complete fucking mess. Just think about the layout of the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. Yes, I had to look that up. They're extremely long and thin. Any alliance will remember having to literally run through a horde town of Camp Majav in Feralas if they wanted to go to Diamol. Consider the size of Azeroth itself. This predates non-mage portals and the like. Traversing the land needed boats or some 10-minute flights across the map before you could start playing. Mixed in with this was that Blizz was overwhelmed with players in the early days, and everyone was being filtered through the few and far between flight points, meaning the server lag could have you sat on your griffin not moving for 30 minutes or more, unable to regain control of your character even with relogs. In summary, it was a total clusterfuck. Flying mounts were the obvious solution, and after living through vanilla, I would be lying if I didn't say it was one of the features I was most excited for in the Burning Crusade. Problem was, though, they'd already fixed it with Outland itself. Outland's a big circular blob. It's not long and thin. Outland and every new area since has been shaped appropriately for travel. Flight points were not complete bullshit anymore, so in many ways, the problems that flying mounts were going to fix no longer existed, and made them superfluous from their inception. But, flying mounts are super awesome for personal convenience. There's no denying that. Once the freedom and convenience was here, that isn't something you could just take away. The thing is, Blizzard embraced flying in the early days. They created zones like the Storm Peaks and Ice Crown, and we could also throw Blade's Edge Mountains in there, but it's dog shit. But it was the early days, right? They were giving it a go. It all kind of went completely pear-shaped when they realized that flying mounts kind of killed the world activity, and players were no longer running into random encounters, which often led to great memories that players got used to in vanilla. So now it's time to ditch the flying mounts, get people back on the ground. But fuck me if they hadn't already started selling flying mounts on the store, which were now going to be unusable. And players were now entrenched in that convenience, and genuinely couldn't give two shits about repopulating the world. So when they were officially dropped in WoD, calamity ensued. Not only was WoD garrison based, let's face it, so people had no reason to go out in the world, but the fact that they had bought mounts and flying mounts that they collected that they couldn't use just led to outrage. Blizzard, as you probably know, had to bring them back after enormous reworks of the game world to accommodate flight, but the white flag had been waved. Flying mounts were going nowhere, and Blizzard's opportunity to show the benefits of no flying were lost, probably for the end of time. Although they have come up with a system where it comes in at the end of the expansion, and that promise seems to be enough to satiate most people. Yeah, of course it was on the list, but don't you go and presume this is about Legion legendaries, because that, sir, would be wrong. We've reached a point where many actually wouldn't mind seeing the shiny, tempting oranges disappear for a year or two in order to perhaps re-establish their value. One could point to Legion as the rock bottom of what is supposedly and should be the most sought-after items in the game, but it's honestly debatable as to when that actually happened. Was it legendary gems? Cloaks? Or just the fact that there's so many of them? In my opinion though, an RPG without extremely rare and differently labelled items just doesn't feel right at all, and I for one want legendary items to remain in the game, in some form. I remember first seeing Ragnaros over a decade ago, and all I could think is whether you could get that hammer or not. Blizzard's issue has always been, how do we implement them? In the game's infancy, it made sense that as a raiding, first-tier title legendary, items should come from the most difficult content and be excruciatingly rare. There was something so childishly wonderful about seeing one half of the bindings drop when it was current content, and also not knowing what the fuck it was. So let's give it to a hunter for safety. We've moved on from there though, and of course some people could get utterly screwed by this system. Its penultimate incarnation was the Warglaves of Azeroth, in which guilds ended up farming the Black Temple until the end of time and even beyond, to get those wonderful green swords and perhaps only get one, or worse, not at all. This is not fair, they cried. It's bullshit. There's a guild that got 3 sets in 3 months. Change, please. So when it did, they added the quest system. Valnir, Dragonwrath, Fangs of the Father, all done via a simple quest system of farming bosses, collecting shards, and at the end, boom! You got your shinies. This carried new problems though. For one, obtaining the desired item was no longer an ecstatic surprise filled with joy, as you could essentially calculate how long it was going to be and what week it would joy and make sure your enchants are all ready in your bag. You could just suck the fun out of the whole thing. On top of that, the system being so cut and dry, everyone could get them. Well, raiders anyway. And it just became a sterile queue system. You might remember by the end of the Dragon Soul, it was rare to find any caster in a decent raid guild that didn't have Dragon Wrath after running split-run Firelands for its entire duration. Coincidentally, this moment in time lined up perfectly with the release of that LFR. And now raiding was no longer cut off or exclusive. Anyone could join in, and along with newfound access to the same tier sets, trinkets and so on that raiders had been privileged with for so long, then of course this new raiding player base said, brah, where are my oranges though? Doesn't make sense. I'm raiding, and despite some of your opinions to the contrary, there is some merit to that question. So another system is needed. Mists of Pandaria simply implemented the tangerine testicles for absolutely everyone. Job done. Problem though, if everyone has one, they can't be any good. You might ask why, but the game simply just doesn't work if you give every player a BFG. It becomes a clusterfuck. So the relative power needs to be brought down. Still decent, but not amazing. And so we eventually come to Legion, and yeah, great. Ultimately, how the hell do we keep these integral ideas for RPGs while accommodating the modern day gamer? At this point, they're a complete joke, so I think most can agree that Legion system isn't what works, but it's too late to change it at this point, and on the next expansion and the one after that, is it possible we could get it right? Why do legendaries make the list? Well, like everything on this list, Blizzard has taken the step allowing everyone access to oranges. This is a feature I think Blizzard would probably like to take back. There isn't much they could do besides flat out remove them to satiate the player base. Let's look at the problem. We could return to raid boss only rare drop system. Honestly, after a debate in the office, we actually think this was the best of the old implementations. It allowed for the surprise and the elation to see it on the loot table, and of course, allowed them to be super rare enough that they could carry a decent level of power and a cool effect. But that now excludes all non-raiders. How do you set the barriers? Mythic? Heroic? Normal? LFR? Can you repeat try it on different difficulties? Why are you being so elitist, taking fun away from those who don't choose to play in that content? We've had legendaries accessible by everyone since Mists of Pandaria. That's 5 years, bro! So why is it suddenly a problem? You already get access to raid gear, you pieces of shit. Now you want to take this away too? Well, fuck you. You get my point, right? And once again, there's merit to that response. 5 years is a long time to suddenly deny something to the player base. Not to mention if we went back to the idea that the Legos were class specific, so most of the classes had absolutely zero chance of getting one for the entire expansion, we could change it back to the quest style system. But where do you get the quest? I hope it isn't raids, as the same arguments come up again. So, which one would we really want to see back? From our POV, it makes sense that the super powerful items should probably come from raid bosses. In today's terms, normal and up, with one chance per boss per week, regardless of the difficulty, so you can't just spam normal, heroic, and mythic. We think it brings back that great shock and awe of actually having it appear, while also it allows them to be powerful enough to be worthy of the colour once again.